The monastery of Princess EHB has eluded researchers for almost 1,200 years. That's because a band of Viking raiders demolished all traces of the religious landmark in the 9th century. But now, against all the odds, a team of experts has finally uncovered the remnants of this long-last settlement, yet as the diggers continue to sift through the ruins, they stumble upon a sinister sight. There among the debris is a cache of butchered bones. How did they get there? And what could they mean? Archaeologists Unearthed are the remains of a Dark Age monastery founded by an Anglo Saxon princess. The archaeologists uncovered the monastery in the Scottish hamlet of Coldingham. You might not have heard of it before, but this area of southern Scotland has a rich history. This includes an important episode in the story of Christianity in Britain, something that Prince has played a vital part in. So what happened? Well, it involved Deb's role in promoting the religion throughout the island. But we should probably clear up some potential confusion first. This arises from the fact that there were two Anglo-Saxon abbots of Coldingham, and although that sounds unlikely, there is a very good reason for this. Oreb lived in the 7th century and is known as E.B. the Elder, which distinguishes her from the second Deb, who lived in the 9th century and is titled the Younger. In their different times were at laces of the monastery at Coldingham, and both were made saints. And of course, we're also talking about the monastery our archaeologists were hoping to find in the summer of 2018. The Elder, we'll just call her Edie, from now on was born around 615 AD into a royal family. Her father was king of Fell for the pagan ruler of Bernicia. This land encompasses territory both in the southeast of modern Scotland and the northeast of what today is England. AB's mother was a child. Dara was a land just to the south of Bernicia, and in 604, Ellsworth invaded this kingdom. Man claimed it as his own. Edwin, king of Dra, fled, and Felfirth married his sister Hub's mother. The couple had 8 kids altogether without their only daughter. Meanwhile, Edwin found sanctuary to the south in the kingdom of East Anglia, which was ruled by Reedwald. Don't worry, we won't test you on these names. That Felfirth was based in his castle at Bamberg, a coastal settlement about 25 miles south of Coldingham. There's still a magnificent castle there today. Although the Anglo-Saxon fortress was torn down in 993 by Viking invaders, there's a bit of a theme developing here. No, the current building has elements dating from Norman times, but Falfirth had only a limited time to enjoy his new lands from his fortified base at Bamberg. Edwin, with the help of his East Anglian host, King Reedwall, assembled troops and in 616 marched on Dara and Bernicia. In the ensuing battle, Edwin regained his kingdom and seized Bernicia, fell forth, and lost his life during the conflict. So what did this mean for E.B.? Well, the recapture of Dara and the conquest of Bernicia had serious implications for her brothers and her mother. The strong likelihood was that Edwin would regard them as potential dynastic rivals, and Dara and Bernicia were therefore no longer safe places for a child and her children. Even though Edwin was her brother, after all, he had no compunction about putting his brother-in-law to the sword. Wisely, a child wasted no time decamping and traveled with her children to the north of Scotland. Her destination was the kingdom of Dalriada on the northwest coast, which was ruled by her distant relatives via Bui, also known as he had shade yellow hair. There, they found refuge. Ad would have been around 10 at this time. Unlike the pagan Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of Dra and Bernicia, Dalriada, which also comprised lands in Ireland, was Celtic and Christian. One of Dalriada's possessions was the tiny island of Iona, in fact, and the monastery there, believed to have been established in 563, was integral in the establishment of Christianity in the west of Scotland. This is where it gets juicy, because this was an important moment in young ABS's life. Now in exile from her Anglo-Saxon pagan roots, she was exposed to Christian beliefs. They seem to have had a major impact on the girl, for she now adopted this religion that demanded worshippers recognize only one God. Hobbes's conversion to Christianity came at a time when parts of Britain were Christian, while others remained pagan. The Romans had brought the story of Jesus to British shores as early as the 1st century AD, but for hundreds of years to come, Christianity was just one more minority called Jesus. His message had to compete with all kinds of pagan beliefs, not to mention the Roman gods. Many historians see the tipping point for British Christianity as coming in the late 6th century. Augustine of Canterbury arrived in England from Rome at the behest of Pope Gregory the Great in 597. He succeeded in converting the pagan king of Elbert of Kent. 1000s. More Anglo Saxons subsequently converted to Christianity. There were also pockets of Christianity in Ireland and Wales in western Scotland, but much of the north, including places such as Coldingham, clung to the old pagan beliefs. Princess Edie was certainly brought up as a pagan. Nonetheless, in later life as a Christian, she would have an important part to play in converting Anglo-Saxon pagans in the north of England and south of Scotland to her adopted creed. Meanwhile, things weren't going smoothly for Edwin, to put it mildly. Two kings, Penda of Mercia in central England and Cadwell of Wales, decided to move against him. In the battle that followed in 633, Edwin met his end in the 4th ABS half-brother, and the oldest son of her late father, Thalfirth, was installed as king for the time being at any rate. But a Cadwallon evidently had second thoughts about making Inference king, and consequently killed him. Then in 634, Oswald, another of fellow fourth sons, ended his exile in Dulreiter and Chas, Penda, and Cadwell on out of Dara and Bernicia. The two lands were subsequently combined to create the Kingdom of Northumbria, and Oswald now took the crown. The upshot of these battles and treacherous murders was that it was at last saved for E.B. to leave the Highlands of Scotland and return to the land of her birth, and she brought with her a powerful dedication to her newfound religion. Now aged about 20 and animated by a compelling Christian calling, head was a woman with a mission. With the help of her brother, now King Oswald of Northumbria, she set about establishing a monastery at the village of Edchester, some 70 miles south of Coldingham. Of that building, however, which is said to have been destroyed by the Vikings, not a trace remains. The village does, though, boast the church of St. Tabo dating back to the 11th century. There may be some mythical aspects to the story of Ebb and an unwelcome suitor called Prince Aidan, but the tale is nonetheless worth telling. It's said that Prince Aidan of Scott had the support of the EMS brothers in his aspirations of marrying the young woman. But E.B., with her passion for Christianity, had other ideas. Variations on the tale say either that she already become a nun and so couldn't break her vows of chastity, or that she became a nun to thwart Aidan's marriage proposal. In any case, had been scones herself atop a rugged crag on Northumbria has coast to avoid the unwanted attentions of Satan. She also apparently sought help from God through the medium of prayer, and it seems that the Lord answered her supplications, for over the next 3 days, the tides were so high around the rocky refuge that Aidan couldn't get to her. And so the two were never wed, and Edie was able to continue her life of religious dedication. After she built the monastery at Ebb, Chester, apparently at the location of an old Roman castle that Oswald had given her, had a new project to pursue. This was the founding of the monastery at Coldingham, and there is an intriguing legend about her choice of site, the very place that the archaeologists we heard about earlier were looking for. Before we come to the legend, we need to register yet another death in the ranks of Northumbria as rulers. This time, it was Ed's brother King Oswald. In 642, Oswald became involved in another clash with his old enemy Penda of Mercia. This time, however, Penda was victorious and Oswald was killed. That meant that Oswald's brother Oscar, now succeeded to the throne, and it seems the DAS will face trouble and strife from other Anglo-Saxons of the day. While thus engaged, his sister was taken prisoner. The ever-resourceful lad made good or escape, however. She commandeered a boat on the northern England's River Humber and sailed out to sea. Traveling up the coast and drawing close to Coldingham, she heard a group of monks singing at the top of some headland, making her way ashore, and reportedly chose this clifftop spot to build her monastery. Unfortunately, stories such as this threw researchers off the scent when they were looking for traces of the monastery, because although various hills and cliffs overlook the sea near Coldingham, as well as sea, none of them is the true location of Ebb's Monastery. Ebb's new monastery was what is known as a double separate monastery. That simply means that it had two sections, one for nuns and the other for monks. AB is said to have used her monastery as a base to preach her Christian beliefs, and 6, you are converting to her religion from among the pagan Anglo Saxons. And it seems that Edie the abbess had considerable diplomatic skills as well. One example of this was the resolution of an argument that her nephew King Firth had become embroiled in her brother Ross was uncharacteristically for an Anglo-Saxon leader who had died of natural causes in 670 and was succeeded by his son Firth. Is certain Bishop Wilfrid had got on the wrong side of extra. However, the king's wife, Ethelreda, had become a nun at Edd's monastery, apparently with the support of Wilfrid. This seems to have angered Firth, who had the bishop imprisoned, but Deb's sweet words then persuaded Firth to let the bishop go. The ability to placate an angry Anglo-Saxon warlord is not to be underestimated. Deb's life came to an end in 683, when she would have been in her late 60s. Then a baleful prophecy from a monk called a Damned came to pass, and the monastery was destroyed by fire. The site subsequently lay deserted until the 8th century, when the younger appeared on the scene and re-established the Coldingham Monastery. But the second Deb's time as an abbess was to end in tragedy. Vikings raided the monastery in 870 and burned it to the ground, and burned her nuns had, according to legend, deliberately disfigured themselves to avoid being raped by the raiders. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. If you liked the video, give it thumbs up. As always, thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel to see more great videos.